biggest problem that we saw was that disinformation is constantly morphing and is constantly becoming more sophisticated, to a point where when we are sitting in Africa, where there's already a huge issue of digital divide, and at the same time we have such a huge threat that is becoming so sophisticated for people to actually understand what it is, that's where the biggest problem lies. And by that I mean, we are now already talking deepfakes. And not a lot of people understand that. How can I make somebody's voice say something that they didn't? How can I make them move in a certain way that they didn't move? So it's always about that face value that they count on, right? The fact that now images obviously are altered, photoshopped, etc. Somebody who's sitting in the rural area wouldn't know what to look for to ensure that they are obviously double checking, fact checking, if this is actually credible or not. So I think that knowledge needs to move away from us who have it, but to those that actually need it the most, which are the citizens that are receiving this information. Because at the end of the day, they are the ones who are making the informed decisions, and they are the ones who are voting. The other trend that we saw was that it always highlights an emotion of fear and uses that to spread. And an example of this was during COVID-19, number one, already everyone is fearful, anxious, what's going to happen. A lot of disinformation was already going around. Some of the ones we had in South Africa was, we're all going to die in 2 years' time. This was created by the government. They are the ones who are now overseeing and controlling us. This is vaccinations or chips that can be used to track. We've had a lot of content going around. But in the very same space, we had graphics going around saying, so our Electoral Commission posted an image to say that please come with your own PIN, given obviously COVID restrictions, and for you to be safe, etc. However, PINs will be provided. That was taken and altered to perceive that they are saying, if you do not have a PIN, don't come. And that on its own means what? There's people who are going to sit at home and say, why are they telling me that I can't vote if I don't have a PIN? But that's not what the original message was. We had campaign videos that were altered where key candidates were, well, it was in a video where they were, it was a deepfake video where they were made to say something that they actually didn't say. And the tricky thing about disinformation is once it starts, even if down the line you come with the truth, it's so difficult to change people's initial perceptions of something. So hence I say it's not necessarily how it started, but it's the impact that it has that makes it even more dangerous towards our democracy. So through Roll 4 and 1, we got to see this, and as well, what we saw was now that political parties are allowed to be able to campaign online, that's also another problem, right? Meaning we're moving away from the traditional poll posters that we used to see, the traditional ground of moving house to house, whereby they are now creating digital posters. Then what happens is people take that and alter it and change their key messaging. And that also then becomes a problem. And through this, media monitoring saw that we need to create a platform where South African citizens can go to verify if this specific political ad was indeed created by this political party. This platform was called Padre, and it allowed the various political parties to upload their marketing material that is accessible to all citizens. So it was also a way of us trying to combat any disinformation that might be created after that. And I think it also highlights the key importance of being proactive rather than reactive. And then on top of that, we've got what we call No News, which is a Chrome extension, and this allows citizens to be able to actually check if a website is credible or not. I think earlier on, one of the speakers mentioned that they would duplicate websites and make it seem like the credible website of a news site, for example. In South Africa, we saw a trend where they would actually mention the news house, media house name, and add a 1 or a character of sort. And in most instances, when people obviously click on a website, they usually look in the beginning. So they know this. They study culture. They study how you interact with information online. And in the very same website, they then duplicate the homepage of the credible media house, and what you then get is, at the bottom, their own narratives. And that also is becoming a problem, and that's why this extension has been created to be able to combat that. But on a closing note, before we carry on, no time, our biggest, I think, move forward was last year, 2021, we had our local government elections. And for the very first time, we actually came to agreement with the social media platforms. Particularly, it was TikTok, Google, Facebook, Google, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. And this was us realizing that we might have people submitting complaints, but the biggest thing is ensuring that we're taking that disinformation down and on time, especially during an election period. And in 2021, the IEC, together with MMA, had reached an agreement with these platforms that they would be able to appoint a team that assists us in ensuring that we are dealing with disinformation at a much faster rate. And for us, that was the first big milestone step towards actually creating that working relationship whereby they actually start understanding what do we mean when we are saying that this is really affecting our democracy, or this is really affecting people's rights to be able to make informed decisions. I think I'll stop right there.
Thank you, and also thank you to Media Monitoring Africa, who helped us put on this event today, and it's been great working with you. I'm now going to pass to Kalibi, if you're ready, to present on the situation with disinformation in Sudan. I think there are some slides that need to go up on the screen. Yeah, if you can start, and then maybe they're working them.
Okay, all right. May you move?
Yeah, I think it's the slide number 3. So if we can, oh no, that one there. Slide number 2.
Okay, I'm Khattab Hamad. I'm the disinformation lead researcher at BIM Reports. BIM Reports, it's a new Sudanese media company, focuses on fact-checking, extraordinary news, and public opinion surveys. So in 8 months, we conducted more than 80 fact-checking reports, and we found that we have to know what is the best environment of disinformation in Sudan. Why do the disinformation creators, why do they do that? To know who are the actors, what are the tools and methods that they are using to produce disinformation. So we conducted a research about that, and our sources of information are our own fact-check reports and the social media companies' reports about the coordinated inauthentic behavior, and other media reports from New York Times, from Global Voices, from Stanford Internet Observatory. We did qualitative analysis to evaluate the disinformation and to know its impact in the Sudanese community, and we analyzed the disinformation campaigns that aim to study the public opinion and to measure it. Next, please. So we analyzed the environment of information as we analyzed the interaction on disinformation content, and we studied the reason for creating the rumors and clarified the actors in spreading disinformation and the motives that lead them to do so. We conducted interviews with experts and stakeholders in Sudan. We also provided an analysis of legal framework for disinformation in Sudan. The political context in Sudan, I will start from 2018. In 2018, the Sudanese people, we made a revolution we ousted the former regime. And then Sudan is ruled by a transitional government which ruled for 2 years, and then the military made a coup in October 2021. To know the environment of disinformation in Sudan, we should know that Sudan geolocation is very unique. Sudan is in Africa, and it's a part of the Arab-spoken region. And Sudan is between Ethiopia and Egypt, and you know the conflict between these countries. And Sudan has a port on the Red Sea, where Russia wanna build a naval base in the Red Sea. So all these actors are engaging in producing disinformation in Sudan. Next. The disinformation context in Sudan, since 2011, we know that the Arab Spring started, and we know that Sudan is the southern neighbor of Egypt. So the Sudanese government, they started to monitor the situation in Egypt, and they knew that social media has an impact on the political context. So the NISS, the National Intelligence and Security Service, they created a new department called Cyber Jihad Unit that aimed to manipulate information online to protect themselves, not to protect the country. In 2017, the ousted president, Omar al-Bashir, he traveled to Russia, and he requested from them to protect Sudan from US and the international community. So since then, Russia has a kind of power in Sudan. About the legal framework, the Sudanese laws mentioned fake news. They didn't mention disinformation or something like that. They only mentioned fake news twice. The first time in the informatics crimes law, which is known as cyber crimes law. The law mentions that the punishment of spreading fake news is 4 years, and it also mentioned in the criminal code, but the criminal code mentioned that the punishment is 6 months. So here we have a conflict of laws which can be used, which can misused by the government against activists and journalists. So I will cover some campaigns that impacted the democratic transition in Sudan. I will start with the campaign that conducted before the coup of October 2021. So we captured 2 rumors about airports closure, and then like after the coup, they closed the airports. So they spread it, they published this information to measure the public opinion in order to know their response. Also, when I say they, I mean the government or the National Intelligence Service or military, because they are who made the coup. So we captured another rumor that there was a request from the UN representative in Sudan to the former prime minister to dissolve the government. And we fact-checked that. We didn't find that true. So after that, a pro-military sit-in was held in front of the presidential palace, and they called to dissolve the government. So when you combine between the rumor of the request from UN representative to dissolve the government and the sit-in, and they were calling to dissolve the government, you see that they want to pass a kind of agenda about dissolving the government between the people. So when General Borhan, when he announced his coup, he didn't say I made a coup. He just said I dissolved the government. That's it. So they were trying to spread that they were trying to spread an information about dissolving the government, to measure the people's opinion. Next. We captured also a campaign against the Sudanese-Egyptian relations. Sorry, can you go to the previous slide? Yeah. A campaign against the Sudanese-Egyptian relations. The Sudanese experience in protest is unique. We have kind of committees called resistance committees. They are neighborhood committees that organizing protests all around Sudan, and they have relation with each other. So when the coup authorities they raised up the invoice of the bill of electric power, they closed the road which linked between Sudan and Egypt. But there are some parties that said they are closing they are blocking this road because they don't like Egypt. So some parties started publishing fake news or publishing false information about Egypt. The first rumor was about a false statement by the Egyptian defense minister saying that he's threatening Sudan if they didn't open the road. Also, we captured another rumor saying that Egypt lost $1 billion USD due to the road blockage. And another rumor says that Egyptian presenter, he said that Sudanese people hate Egypt and their president must be changed. Another rumor which we captured, they said that the Ethiopian President Abiy Ahmed said that Ethiopia will buy crops from Sudan with $5 billion. So when you combine all these rumors, you'll find that there is a party that trying to spread information that Sudan has bad relations with Egypt, and it's better to collaborate with Ethiopia, not Egypt. And then next, the Egyptian they replied to this campaign by they shadow banned the resistance committee's content on the internet. Next. We don't have time. Yeah. Next time. Next. We also captured that not only the governmental or military parties who spread disinformation, we captured that there are parties that oppose to military rule. They are spreading information against the military and other governmental agencies. Next. So we found that most of the local actors are related to the ousted regime, Islamist parties, paramilitary groups, the military itself, because it's controlled by the ousted regime until now. Next. So about the foreign actors, we have Russia as the main actor. So Troika, which is the group of Norway, US, and UK, they published a statement saying that Wagner Group are spreading disinformation in Sudan. And Meta, they published a report saying that a Russian network has more than 132 accounts, 30 pages, and 6 groups, and it has 440K followers. They removed this network from Facebook and Instagram. Stanford Internet Observatory, it mentioned that these accounts, which were removed by Meta, have relation with the Russian Internet Research Agency. Next, please. Also, we found that United Arab Emirates has some engagement with through disinformation in Sudan. Next. Also Egypt, as I mentioned. Next. Next. Ethiopia too. Next. Next. So we found that the tools that are using, we couldn't find the softwares that they are using, but we found that they used to fabricate some documents, some photos, some videos, and they are posting outdated photos and outdated news. So they are looking to find new something to publish it from the old content. They also use hashtag spamming and CIB, the coordinated inauthentic behavior. Next. The main methods that they are using to assist them to publish or to spread this disinformation, they create a fake page and then like publishing like funny content, and after it being a kind of famous page, they change its identity by changing its name and its logo. They also publish fake news on popular pages. We captured that. They use this Al Arabiya news. Al Arabiya is like it's the second most famous news agency in MENA region after Al Jazeera. Next. So the agenda of disinformation industry in Sudan, like we found that, we found that they have political agendas, security agendas, ideological agendas, reputation washing. Some of the military guys, they want to wash their bad reputation through publishing fake news. There are also some personal interests. So, thank you.
Thanks so much for that. We're now going to pass to our final speaker, Freewat from Inform Africa, who's going to talk about fact-checking in Ethiopia.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you everyone for joining our session. I am from Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. My name is Freewat, and I am a program manager at Inform Africa, which is a local civil society organization. So we are engaged in different fact-checking works, media literacy, disinformation, misinformation, different research and digital rights. We haven't actually done much of digital rights, but we want to expand on that. In our countering disinformation initiative called HackCheck, we've been working on disinformation and misinformation and countering disinformation as well. So recently, Inform Africa under HackCheck has just started working with Meta's trusted partner channel to monitor and report hate speech, election, and interference as well as misinformation. So previously, our outreach was very low and to the society, and it was very low. So we are hoping that this will help in countering misinformation in a great extent. So during the election last year, that we had last year, the previous election, so there were lots of misinformation and disinformation that was spreading throughout the country. From different activists and individuals that supports different political parties. So we were actually trying to tackle that disinformation, but we couldn't actually do much because we don't have much of fact checkers in Ethiopia. We only have almost like 13, 14 fact checkers across our country. And to actually get the tools and everything to tackle this, we needed to be an IFCN signatory, which is the International Fact Checkers Network, which has a really long policies, and it has been taking long to be an IFCN signatory. And if someone here is from IFCN, maybe you can help with that as well. So yeah, we've been countering disinformation manually mostly, and using different Google platforms and everything. So the second is, my second point would be, so social media companies need to progressively investigate unauthenticated accounts, pages, and groups that interfere with voters and the election process. Actually in Ethiopia we don't really have the digital platform for elections. It's done manually mostly, and we don't really see political parties or leaders doing their speech on digital platforms, and we would like to see more of that now, hoping that into 2024 to see that more. And also during elections we face a lot of a lot of restrictions in social medias, and we have to use another platforms like VPN to access social medias, and yeah, we counter that kind of problems and challenges. So I think the role that social media can play during election is it can act as a transparency or watchdog for election, and as a campaign platform, since nowadays it's a digital era and everyone uses social media. Most of us use social media, so I think it can act as a campaign platform and as an open forum for debate and discussions, and also act as a public voice for the society. And it can act as a public educator, because when we talk about misinformation and disinformation, we also need to consider media literacy, because we need to disseminate, or we need to educate our society about media literacy and how to use information that they gather from their audiences. I think I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. So we've heard from our brilliant panelists, and now we want to hear from you. Like Alexandra said, we're at the beginnings of sort of deciding what we do in 2020-24 and what we can do together, and we're really keen to hear from organisations here today who've attended FIFA about what their needs are, what they think may happen in 2024 if they're doing work ahead of those elections. So if we can go to the next slide, I've actually got some questions for you that I'd really like us to start discussing together, and then, like I said at the beginning, we can take this discussion beyond this panel and we'll sort of make sure we're following up with all of you. So I mean, the questions that it'd be really great for us to discuss are: what do we think the risks are of social media companies and their influence on the information environment in African elections? What are we experiencing on this continent? What are the things that you're seeing in your countries? Then second of all, what do we think is the actual role and responsibility of social media? So what can those companies be doing? What should they be doing to protect democracy and human rights during elections? And then finally, and this is what Alexandra was talking about, what can we do together to make sure that they are paying as much attention to elections that are happening in Africa as they do pay to elections that happen in the United States, happen in European countries? Because Alexandra pointed out, at the moment, there's a lot of inequity, and we want to change that, but to do that, we think we need to work together. So if you want to help answer those questions, your interventions would be very welcome. Also, if you have questions for our brilliant panel, feel free to put your hands up. Any questions? Can we put the slide up with the questions? I mean, does anyone have a question for the panel to kick us off? I can see a willing participant. I'm going to go there.
Yeah, I guess maybe for the colleague from Sudan, I wanted to see if you yourself have been doing any particular research on Russian-led disinformation campaigns in the region that you've seen either in Sudan or in other contexts, because it seems like in particular the Wagner Group has been active in places like Congo and other contexts regionally. So I wonder if you've linked with any groups that have been tracking that or done any of that research on your end.
Okay, thank you for interesting. Actually, we couldn't find if we couldn't verify that if Wagner Group has interference with Sudan or not, because we don't have that advanced technology tool. But like when a report came from the technology platforms such as Meta or Twitter, we trust on them because they couldn't publish something. We couldn't publish fake news by themselves that may put impact on their reputation in the field of combating disinformation. I guess I answered your question or not.
Great. Oh, I can see a question up here, and then one here. So we'll take those in two.
Hi, my name is Vesa from Zambia. I forgot my colleague from South Africa, I forgot her name. Very nice name, I'm sorry. You mentioned something about media sustainability, and I work in the space of working with media in Zambia to bring them to sustainability. My question is, your institution, or even for the panelists that would find this relevant to what they're doing, do you not think that the media has a big role to play in disinformation, especially in African context, where we had a similar situation like Ethiopia, where we had VPN during elections because the media institutions, the online platforms, the online media platforms were the ones that were carrying a lot of disinformation, and they were championed by the regime. They were being paid to carry this disinformation. So how can we work with the media instead? Because it seems that factual information seems to be supported when it comes from media institutions more than individuals. Citizen journalism isn't that big of a deal than it is when you hear information from an institution that you think is quote-unquote credible. So media sustainability versus disinformation. Where is your support on that?
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is David Obinna Anyele. I'm from Lagos, Nigeria. I wanted to ask, do you have a mechanism? This question is for the presenter from Ethiopia and from South Africa. Do you have a mechanism for honoring decent media houses that shun all forms of, disinformation, misinformation, that undermining the democratic process or the security of the citizen? Thank you.
Thank you for that question, and it's Nomshato Lubisi, don't worry. I want to echo this with all honesty. I think MMA has really tried to drive this, and that is media plays a very crucial role when it comes to combating disinformation. And in South Africa, we promote our media as the core place for any individual to verify information. And that is solely because the media is there, number one, for a very critical mandate, right? Which is to inform society, to be the mirror of society at the same time. And especially during elections whereby the media coverage there, and by the way, we've been monitoring our media coverage since 1990, in the sense of whose voices are being heard, how are they covering around issues. And this highlights that whatever they are covering and whatever they are communicating, that should be the first place that people go to verify, especially now that we have social media, which is full of various information created, or narratives that are created to drive certain agendas. So in terms of media's role when it comes to combating disinformation, I think they're in the top key institutions to be the distributors of credible information. And then second, to speaking to media sustainability, I think disinformation has actually highlighted the need for investigation. We need to go back to the original journalism of investigation. So it now means that fact-checking needs to be at the core of anything that goes out in terms of news, in terms of digital social media news that are circulated. So it's no longer about one source has said this. It's about verifying it beyond the one source. It's about verifying it beyond that one post that you saw on Twitter. And I think one of the things that has happened over the introduction of social media is that we have seen how, particularly let me use Twitter. We've seen how Twitter has informed certain news agendas. So we'd see that something is trending, or we'd see that certain people are talking about a certain topic. And then that would be turned into a story. However, that can no longer be the case. Right? So it also emphasizes that as much as, and it's unfortunate because it means more resources, it means training, it means digital literacy, it means them having the tools to be able to fact check properly. But that needs to be at the core mandate. I think the second question was about access to, if I'm correct, any narratives of going around during elections of disinformation. With Real 411, anyone, including media, can keep checking trends of what is currently going on in terms of disinformation at the current point. So you get to see in terms of which key individual is being spoken about in this counter narrative, what topic is covered in those narratives. So you can actually even do your own mapping out of perspective from the various information that Real 411 provides you. So we don't just come and say, this is disinformation, but we come and give you more of a full picture of what's happening. So that's also one of the key areas, obviously, as well as the campaigns that go around to educate people that these are the narratives that are going around. Thank you.
So regarding Ethiopia, we as a company partner up with different media houses and media outlets to give their journalists a training on fact-checking and how to use the tools. But I think they fail to practice it because it can get handy and it's a lot of work. We get it, but we think that fact-checking is also a really great way to get a real data or a real information for the society. And also we're working to get into the mainstream medias, because most of our society uses mainstream outside of Addis. In the rural areas, our society uses mainstream, so we're trying to disseminate, or sorry, not disseminate, to tackle disinformation through mainstreams as well, beyond social media. So I think that answers your question. Thank you.
Okay, about Sudan, we found that we have a gap in getting information outside the capital. So now we are creating a new fact-checking network all around Sudan. we aim to train 20 fact checkers from activists or journalists or citizen journalists. So about how to use the open source investigation tools, about how to use these techniques, and about how to conduct investigations on ground when there is no internet, because you can't find anything online. That's it.
Thanks, everyone. Has anyone got any more questions for the panel? Sure. We can get a mic down to the front here.
Hello, my name is Kelly. A quick question. I know Google has been a major funder of platforms like Africa Check, Dubawa. What is the role of potential big tech platforms like Google in funding fact-checking agencies on the continent?
I was just telling my colleague, fellow panelist, that should be the best one to come in as a fact checker. But given, I think, from the experience of working with the big tech such as Google, is that I think there should be obviously a fine line, a very bold line, actually not a fine line. And that is, we've seen that over the years I've actually funded more than fact-checking various initiatives. And I think that it goes back to the organization themselves and understanding what their mandate is. I mean, I'd like to believe that, especially when it comes to fact-checking, there cannot be any sort of polluting of that environment, in the sense of where you'd have issues of a funder overstepping that line. So for me, I think, number one, I applaud them for them funding such initiatives, because I think we need more funding, especially when it comes to fact-checking, etc. However, there should be obviously the underlying understanding of the role of a funder and the role of the initiator at the same time.
So in my perspective, I think, yeah, we have lots of Google platforms that we use, but we don't really partner up with Google because they're actually very hard to reach. Yeah, and I think they need to look into the initiatives, as we said, the initiatives and their role that they can play, and be partnering up and be partnering up with us and make more impacts, I guess. Yeah.
About us at Beam Reports, we found that Google provides funds to fact-checking agencies, but they aim to to support these agencies by technology, by funding them to create new technologies to use it in fact-checking. Google supports us and all fact-checkers through their own platform, through their technologies, and we really use it, and it's really supportive.
We've got another idea.
I just want to add something out of interest. I actually have a different take on this. I think they should be working more with organizations, not only looking at fact-checking, but other elements of promoting us to get to a point where disinformation is no longer such a large threat. And I'll tell you why. I think by them working with fact-checking organizations, they're able to see the gaps that they also have on their own platforms. And I think, you know, in terms of them understanding the daily use of any user online is given more from those that are interacting with it every day. But coming from an MMA perspective, we do work with Google, however, not for fact-checking, for digital literacy for young people. And with that relationship, what we have seen is that they are now getting to understand more of, you know, the young learner within South Africa and the gaps that are there. So I would also agree in terms of promoting us starting to actually have that multi-stakeholder approach with the big tech, with government, with academics, with, you know, organizations, civil society, etc.
Thank you. And yeah, it's a really interesting question how civil society engages with those companies. So thank you for asking it. Does anyone else have a question? And if not, I've got a question for the panel. Okay, I can ask. So you all have elections coming up in 2024, and it'd be great to hear if you were sat here and it wasn't me and it was the chief exec of the big social media companies, what would you ask them to be doing to help protect democracy and human rights in your country? What's the one thing that they could do that would really transform the online environment in your context? I'll give you a second to think about it. And maybe, Alexandra, if you could maybe think globally, because we work across elections around the world.
Okay. At BIM Reports, we captured that Rapid Support Forces. It's a paramilitary group in Sudan. And we captured them publishing misleading content to wash their bad reputation, because they're killing people in Darfur, and that was documented by Amnesty. So they are using Meta and Twitter platforms to promote themselves, and it's a propaganda content. The problem is Sudan is under the responsibility of another fact-check agency. It's based in Jordan. So they don't, they speak Arabic, same to Sudan, but they don't know the Sudanese context, and they don't know how to manage Sudanese issues. So it's the third-party fact-checking working with Meta. So the third-party fact-check agencies that reporting the disinformation cases in Sudan to Meta. Why Meta is linking Sudan with other countries, and not only Sudan, other even Palestine. It's under the focus, under the responsibility of that agency. So what when the election come? I think the military has the power, they have resources, they have money, and we see they can control the media in Sudan, and they know how to measure the public opinion, and how to put impact to change their opinion and their direction in even for the coup. What about election? So what I want to say is tech companies have to take their decisions carefully for Africa and other countries that are not under their focus. Thank you.
So for me, I would suggest that tech companies and social media companies should engage the people around, because in Ethiopia we have more than 80 tribes. So I think we have also different languages, and it's only reachable for, some of the society. So I think they have to acknowledge everyone, and they have to be inclusive and have to acknowledge everyone. So yeah.
I think for me, to just maybe highlight is that I think tech companies need to start realizing that when we're speaking community guidelines, they need to start reflecting local settings, because hate speech here might not be hate speech somewhere else. And that's the biggest issue we have, that if somebody goes and reports hate speech, or if somebody goes and reports an offense, and only to find that it's not ruled hate speech, but within the local settings in terms of legislation, etc., it is actually seen as hate speech. So I think there needs to be a deliberate collaboration, especially between electoral bodies, with the big tech as well, in combating disinformation and understanding when we are talking about local settings, what that means. And I think there also needs to be a serious multi-stakeholder approach when it comes, and I think I'll highlight this many times, when it comes to understanding that we cannot only leave it to the big tech to do it, we cannot only leave it to our electoral bodies to do it. Civil society needs to also come into play. State also needs to understand their role. But I'd like to highlight one of the bodies that I think we're not highlighting, which is the political parties themselves also has a role to play when it comes to combating disinformation, because it's their content that's also out there that's being manipulated, that's being altered, and it's their various followers that are also interacting with this information. And I think it's key that all these parties come together in ensuring that when we do have elections, they are done in such a way that each body is playing their role.
Yeah, so I think it's clear from what we've heard in terms of, the speakers from different countries, that the core issue really is for local contexts and local languages to be sufficiently reflected and resourced in safeguards and protections by the social media companies. This is really key, and the underinvestment is just massive across Africa, Asia, Latin America, anywhere basically outside the United States and Europe. So I think, it's really important that, in the lead up to 2024, when you have that kind of mega election year, that we've done that work so the companies know the level of investments they need to put in, so they understand the harms that are already being caused by the reality of underinvestment of, into platform safety and security for users around in the global majority. So I think that's kind of our focus, what we're going to be doing, and we're really looking for people who want to join us in, co-creating something to make sure that, the tech companies are properly accountable, to the global majority, which they haven't been to date.
Thank you. I don't know if everyone in the audience agrees with those, or they'd have other things they'd like to say to the tech companies. Feel free to raise your hand if you do. I might also ask the panel, so we as Digital Action have spoken a bit about how we can collaborate and how we can work together as civil society. But again, as people with elections happening in 2024, what do you need from other civil society organisations? How can we work together, and what would be most beneficial to you? You'll obviously be doing so much work, doing the fact-checking, doing the monitoring. What else do you need to make sure that social media companies are listening to you? And I might go this way this time.
I hope I heard your question correctly. But I think our experience has, from a South Africa perspective, but also from working with the tech companies, that in 2024 we'll be dealing with a whole different picture of what disinformation is than we are seeing it now. And I'm very scared to even say that it might even be more difficult to deal with then, because it will be in a form that it needs further interrogation of how to decipher it. And I think it's key in understanding that when we're saying take down notices, when we're saying ensuring that we will literally halted from the point of spreading even further, there needs to be a more deliberate attempt on that. And I think, as you mentioned on that, in terms of as much as we can come together and campaign on that, I think we really need to put pressure in the understanding that, when it comes to the impact that it has, it's quite, bad.
So yeah, I agree. So the disinformation that we are dealing with now is going to be very different for the future, because it's kind of getting very advanced, and it's also hard for us even to monitor and to really tackle those, because there are different, like, deep fakes and everything, and it's really hard for us even to see it. So I think as even civil societies they need to collaborate and share ideas and inform each other. It doesn't have to be about funds and everything. It has to be sharing experience as well. So I think if we collaborate with tech companies, civil societies, I think we can do more and more. Yeah.
Actually, I already started to collaborate with Freeway, yeah, because we are neighbors in countries. Yeah, in 2024, we have election together, and I believe that all countries has impact on each other. So fact check, we fact check in Sudan and report to them, and they fact check in Ethiopia and report to us. That really makes sense and combat the disinformation in the region. That's
Does anyone else have any reflections on how we could collaborate, or things that they would need when they're monitoring elections in 2024? It'd be great to hear if other people have experience of doing that, fact-checking and monitoring during elections. Okay, well, I think in that case, I mean, like I said at the beginning of this session, we'd really love to continue this conversation with all of you, so please do come up to myself and Alexandra at the end, or any of the other panelists, but I'll pass to Alexandra now to wrap it up.
Yeah, so I just want to thank all of you for coming to our session. We're really at the start of this work, kicking it off, and it's something that we want to develop in an inclusive way, and in a way that's, that shares voice and power. So it's essential that, you know, we know that we want to work with people kind of across the African continent and beyond on this key challenge, and link it up to, you know, the centers of power where change can actually happen, which at the moment is really in those company headquarters and with decision makers that have influence on them. So we're very much aware that there is something of a divide at the moment, and we want to take the next 18 months to close that divide in order to make a change. Because I think we're starting early enough to potentially have an impact on 2024 to mitigate some of the kinds of harms that we're seeing in elections happening, you know, whether in Kenya or, you know, Brazil coming up, etc. So yeah, just to say that we're really looking forward to connecting with everyone here at FIFA. We've spent a really good 2 days already doing that, and looking forward to our conversations and future collaborations going forward. Thank you.
Thanks everyone, and thanks particularly to our panelists for such a great session. Thank you.